Talking politics can be fun. Call women the weaker sex, for instance, and you'll get it from both sides. Feminists will scream about how sexist you are for even thinking women aren't strong, and how victimized and crippled women are by your misogynistic attitude. This, they will tell you, is why our society is short on female CEOs, legislators, and governors. There are, according to feminist lore, thousands of bold female leaders just waiting in the shadows for men to stop hogging all of the responsibility and let them take charge. Because that's what leaders do, right? Sit around waiting for other people to let them lead. Stop calling women bossy, you evil woman-hating incels, and do what we tell you. What's your problem? Don't you respect women? HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. The feminist ban bossy screed that equates being overbearing with leadership is a nauseatingly stupid narrative. Hearing it day in and day out from women who couldn't lead their way out of a paper bag is exhausting. Thank goodness we only have to deal with that from feminists. I mean, you never hear anything like that from non-feminists, right? Well, that's not exactly the case. A friend of mine recently sent me a link to a video of Steven Crowder and Jason Whitlock discussing censorship. Not to listen to the whole thing, but to listen to a short comment that he felt highlighted a way feminism hurts women. I was doing stuff and continued listening beyond that point, only to hear the guys get into a discussion about so-called toxic masculinity, a term that Crowder seems willing to adopt if he can control what it means. That, of course, is a mistake, because feminist rhetoric isn't about communication. It's about dictation and control. But that's not what got me thinking. I'm used to that from traditionalists. They seem to think if their intentions are good, they can't be twisted. They haven't yet realized that in feminists they're dealing with a sociopathic movement. After that bit, the guys got into the idea of black culture being matriarchal. In the midst of that discussion, Whitlock described his mother as a strong woman because, as he explained, she always has to take charge. He described this as a source of tension between himself and her because while he's paying all of the bills, she wants to be the boss. There was a whole little discussion after that, exploring along the lines of equating a woman wanting to be in charge with being strong, and its effect on sons when their mothers act like that. It got me thinking, and I left a comment explaining something that I think most of society does not get about women, something that is holding women back and putting everyone around so-called strong women at risk. Domineering is not the same as strong. The two are entirely separate things. Many a strong woman recognizes where her strengths are and how she can use them to best achieve her interests, including her interest in promoting the welfare of her family and the success of any project she is involved in, without having to think of herself as being in charge. The same is true of men, and we're able to recognize this as a sign of a strong man. It is really damaging to both sexes that we condone the misconception that having to feel like one is in charge is a sign of a strong woman. There's a huge difference between wanting to feel like one is in charge and wanting to be in charge. Many controlling, domineering women want to feel like they're in charge but let someone else take the responsibility, like a woman who postures about being in charge or acts domineering and controlling while letting a man pay all of her bills. When a woman reserves for herself the right to make all of the big decisions, but transfers blame to the nearest man when there are negative consequences, such as, "You got me pregnant," instead of, "We have conceived a child together," or "I messed up with the pill after telling you that you didn't need a condom and now I am pregnant." She has not taken charge, and she is not in charge. She is a loose cannon, just as we would say about a man who did that. But she can do way more damage because while a male loose cannon is eligible to be criticized, everyone, including traditionalists and conservatives, will give a female loose cannon the benefit of the doubt. They'll let her shoot wrecking ball-sized projectiles through the lives of everyone around them and blame the involved men for not doing something about the damage, while never considering that maybe the shooter should take some responsibility before she kills someone. That's the biggest thing men, including and sometimes especially men on the right, do not understand about women. All too often, women don't understand it either because it involves things they aren't inclined to consider. Female loose cannons are the cause of every bit of damage that results from their carelessness, arrogance, and bossiness, just like male ones. Romanticizing and condoning their behavior because they are women is dangerous and stupid. There is no amount of responsibility that men can take that can make up for the pretense that a woman cannot or should not be responsible, nor for the damage that she can do within her sphere of influence by being in any way irresponsible. Both sexes have to be equally accountable. The ultimate strength a human being has is in his or her own sense of personal accountability, mindfulness of his or her influence on his or her environment and the people in it, and consideration for the consequences, good or bad, of his or her choices. Nothing trumps that, regardless of your sex. When people understand that and stop viewing women through rose-colored glasses, the solutions to a majority of issues will become clear. That's the tough part, though, isn't it? Those feel-reinforced glasses are such a standard part of our culture that non-feminists even view some feminist rhetoric through them. This is partly due to traditional pedestalization of women, which does make both traditionalists and conservatives vulnerable to arguments that rely on presuming women to be innocent and benevolent, even when they're not. It's also partly because feminists have been screaming their rhetoric on gender roles at everyone for about 200 years, and they've managed to move the Overton window quite a bit in regard to what constitutes acceptable and admirable behavior in a woman. Like I explained in a post a few years ago titled A Question of Respect, right or wrong, there was a time when women were presumed morally superior and gentler in comparison to men, and were expected to live up to that. A woman who acted as boisterous and crass as a man could be did not command the same level of respect as a woman who had a more reserved, modest demeanor, because the latter was considered to be more mature, more socially adept, and even more trustworthy than the former. Today, women expect to be able to command that level of respect without even trying to earn it, in part because feminists have pushed for a lack of standards where women's character is concerned. And feminists have mostly trained society to avoid judging a woman's character by the consequences of her choices. They have successfully framed the discussion on power in society around the idea of equal rights regardless of the details, and defined the concept of power to exclude social influence. They've convinced the general public to discuss the topic as if authoritative control is the only form of power that matters. They are now able to maintain the illusion that if there's a gender imbalance in positions of authoritative responsibility, women are at the disadvantaged end of a power imbalance. This is why feminists get away with ban bossy and talking about bossy women as if they are strong, even when their rhetoric reaches people who oppose them on most political initiatives, and that has affected how every other issue is discussed. They've gotten people from nearly all facets of the political spectrum to refer to sexual misconduct accusers as strong and brave, without even being able to recognize falsely accused men as victims of anything. In fact, most people will shove other women in as victims in their place. You know, the ones who won't be believed because other women lied, because it has become unusual to question the idea that women making such accusations should be automatically believed. They're able to wrap parenting issues in the context of prioritizing the will and interests of women, mothers, women who want to be mothers, and women who don't want to be mothers. As a result, single motherhood is pretty much unilaterally discussed as if it only happens because a father abandoned his family, and birth control sabotage is viewed through entirely different lenses depending on which sex engaged in it, because while what she wants matters, what he wants only undermines her interests. The local consequences of mistaking bossiness or controlling behavior in a woman for strength can be so subtle as to go unnoticed, but they can also be dire. Broken families, misguided kids, economic hardship, toxic workplaces, and ruined friendships. When an entire society makes the mistake, it destroys the dialogue around political issues and hinders reform. That consequence cannot be avoided or mitigated. It can only be prevented. And to do that necessitates reversing the slow evolution of a cultural attitude. Our society no longer wants to view women as the weaker sex. Are we ready to hold women to that standard? This week, HBR Talk will discuss how strong women narratives miss the difference between taking charge and demanding to be in charge, and how that affects women's impact on their environments and the people who share them. The discussion streams on multiple platforms. You can tune in to the YouTube live stream or find other viewing and listening options for that time or later on HoneyBadgerBrigade.com.